So, as I've said in the past, one of my all-time favorite animes is Goblin Slayer. It's a show that to me basically does everything right. I love the art style. The dark fantasy setting is really cool. In particular, I like that it's an RPG based anime, but it's based off of tabletop instead of video games. So a lot of the mechanics are just very different. You don't have levels or a lot of the other stuff. It just feels a lot more organic and kind of down to earth, and just kind of different than a lot of other shows that take place in kind of like a fantasy RPG setting. The approach to combat reminds me kind of D&D 2. They normally don't just rush in and just start shooting everything because that's how you get yourself killed. And the show is very like consistent in bringing that up, like that going into a situation without a plan is a bad idea. So they normally have some sort of plan, and I appreciate that they come up with it, and then Goblin Slayer like reacts on the fly if something happens. But I find the combat in this a lot more interesting, and a lot more tense than in a lot of other similar shows. I like the characters. The character art looks really good. I like all the outfits, uh, just how they're designed. I think that all looks really nice. The characters themselves are very likable. You have a pretty broad range. You have some like touching moments between them, some bro moments, some banter moments. Just overall, characters are very well done. The show, despite being dark and kind of gory, is very much laugh out loud funny at a lot of parts. Most of this comes from just like Goblin Slayer being completely oblivious, and just I was waiting for the English dub to come out because his voice actor just does a really good job of saying like crazy Goblin Slayer stuff completely seriously. Like in season one, he just turns to someone and goes, "Are you a goblin?" Like it is, he's 100% serious, even though it's really absurd. So I like the show overall, and I was been waiting eagerly for season two to come out, and it took quite a while. And so I guess the question we're going to ask: does this live up to season one? Is this more Goblin Slayer? Is it the exact same thing but slightly better? Is it the same thing but worse? Did they like try to innovate at all? And I'm happy to say, I think season two is pretty similar to season one quality wise. I think they realized they couldn't do the exact same thing all over again, and so they switched focus a bit. Season two is a lot more slice of lifey than season one, and it has a bit more kind of mini arcs within it. And you have more kind of a case where different characters will get a couple episodes about themselves, and it's just kind of a nice acknowledgement that the relationships between the characters were established in season one, and now it's time to kind of let them grow. They're fully a party now. They've kind of accepted that Goblin Slayer is their leader, and they don't have to reestablish that, so they can start off right from the beginning with them kind of being a lot more casual with one another. So this directly follows the movie The Goblin King's Crown, or Crown of the Goblin King, which I didn't really like because most of it was a rehash and the rest wasn't great. So Noble Fencer, the main character, or one of the main characters from the Goblin Slayer movie, has set up a training school for novice adventurers. So we have a bunch of stuff where we have Goblin Slayer and the rest of the party who are mentoring the young adventurers. It's kind of a cool, almost callback to the beginning of season one, where Priestess's party of novice adventurers just got completely slaughtered by goblins. And I think Noble Fencer is just like, look, I don't want this to happen to anybody else. What happened to me? And it is kind of an interesting to see them acknowledge the actual threat that having a bunch of young people just randomly set out by themselves to fight monsters, and how high the death rate towards that will be. We had Wizard Boy who shows up, who is the brother of one of the members of Priestess's party who died. Now, Priestess has been training for over a year now, or been an adventurer for over a year, and she wants to get promoted. So she has to lead a party of other people. They wind up making her leader of the party for a couple of missions. The problem is she can't get promoted because she's, I think, an obsidian level, like one of the lowest ranks, but she hangs out with a bunch of silver adventurers. So they just, I think the guild just assumes that they carry her, which they kind of do. Although as time goes on, she gets more and more useful. That is something I appreciate it about this. You do see different characters as time goes on. In particular, Priestess goes from just being like kind of useless to being a core member of the team, and her miracles are very decisive. Something that's kind of also like D&D is rather than just firing a bunch of spells, casters can only use a couple spells a day, but they're extremely impactful. So, like, they can completely change the tide of a battle, and they often will use them in non standard ways to kind of do some other stuff. Actually, it's kind of funny because Wizard Boy joins them on one of their adventures that Priestess is leading, and like she's like tried to come up with a plan, and Wizard Boy's like, I'm a sorcerer, I can just do whatever I want. So he just runs in and aggro's everybody, and it was kind of a mess. As we're going through this arc, we have one of season two's, I think, strong points, and that is we get to see a lot more of Goblin Slayer the man behind the mask. Kind of like when you go from the Guts Black Swordsman arc to when Guts actually gets a party, you get to see the person kind of thawing out. I don't think it's exactly a tsundere, but Golden Slayer was a very kind of emotionless, passionless man who really didn't care about anything except killing goblins. And in season two, there's like a part where he goes out drinking with some of the other guys, and he starts talking about how like when he was young, he wanted to be an adventurer. And he wanted to be kind of the adventurer that like High Elf Archer and the rest of his parting team wanted to be. He wanted to kill monsters, save princesses, kind of live the high life until like the reality of the all the goblins slaughtering his village came down. And he just basically is like, it's my job. I'm Goblin Slayer. I have to keep killing goblins because if I don't kill goblins, nobody's gonna kill goblins. It's interesting because there's a couple parts where he admits that he had fun on adventures. I think at the end of season one, he said he wanted to he had was passionate about becoming an adventurer, but at the same time he feels guilty that he starts enjoying the adventures. He feels guilty now that he has friends because he blames himself for his sister's death and for the death of his village. And whenever somebody dies from goblins, he views it as being his fault, because if he hadn't have been sleeping, if he hadn't have been out drinking with the boys, if he hadn't have been doing something else, he could have been killing goblins. And if he had have killed those goblins, that person wouldn't have died. And so we do get to start to see the man a bit more behind the mask, a lot more than we did in season one. And like I said, a lot of the characters get their own episodes. We have kind of a fun side trip where High Elf Archer's sister's getting married, so they get to go to the Elven Forest, and that was a lot of fun. Guild Girl and Cowgirl go with them, and we get some kind of fun interactions there. The whole like training the rookie adventurers arc is cool because you also once again have Goblin Slayer kind of sees some of himself in the rookie adventurers, and he's like, even though my dreams are gone and I'm just a hollow vast vessel that kills goblins. I don't really know where the shipping is headed in this series because in season one I thought it was going to be Goblin Slayer Priestess, but in this one there really wasn't any development between them. If anything, it seems to imply that like Cowgirl is the final girl, as people basically think that she's his wife at this point in time, which I thought was kind of funny. As I've said, that my ship for Goblin Slayer is I like him with either Guild Girl or High Elf Archer, but that's just me. So the final arc in season two is they go to Sword Maiden gets them to escort her to the royal capital, and then the princess runs away, and they have to go save the princess from goblins. We have like some of the most Sigma male Goblin Slayer scenes ever. I like to say Goblin Slayer is a Sigma male, that he's a Spurg, and that he's a Chad. So Sword Maiden is just head over heels in love with Goblin Slayer. Like she just is in love with him. I mean, this whole party kind of is in love with him. I mean, all the attractive female characters except for Witch. are in love with him, but she is super super thirsty for Goblin Slayer. Like she fantasizes him about all the time. And we have this scene where she's like meets up with him again, and she's like, "Have you thought of me at all? Well, we've been apart." And he's like, "No." It's like, "Who are you again?" He doesn't say "Who are you again," but that's kind of the impression. And then she just gets really upset, and she keeps trying to like flirt with him, and he's just like, just doesn't even realize it because partially because he's autistic and he doesn't spend much time around other people. Well, Gunslayer, it's somewhere like a combination of PTSD and autism that have merged together in the creation of like this Sigma male who's just because like the fact that Goblin Slayer is kind of indifferent to them seems to actually like attract women to him. I think it's just because he's so confident and so decisive. Goblin Slayer is a really good looking guy, but nobody really knows what he looks like under his mask, except for a couple scenes that they see, but you can't see. But as far as we can determine, he is a really good looking guy. But he's just so confident in fighting goblins. When it comes to like battle, he always has plans. He has backup plans and stuff like that. And we get kind of a fun final arc of the season where they go off to rescue the princess. And now that I think about it a bit more, maybe this is kind of a reference to what he said earlier. He wanted to be a hero and save princesses and stuff like that. He kind of got like the adventure he dreamed about as a kid. However, the season ends on a bit of a low note, as when he's going home, he notices that the goblin population keeps growing and he will just be fighting forever until eventually the goblins kill him. And there will never really be a time where he can rest or he can um, kind of come to try to live a life of his own. So season two on the whole, like I said, it's less plot driven than season one. You have a couple mini arcs. You have the like Elvish Forest arc. You have the trip to the capital city, and they have like the training arc. So I guess there's like three, and they're about 4 episodes each. And I thought they were all three of them were very good. Like I said, there's lots of good interaction between the characters, lots of good banter between Dwarf Shaman and High Elf Archer, and just stuff like that. But you do get to see a lot of character development and a lot more introspection within Goblin Slayer than what you saw before, because he's gone from being like a completely like I said a complete soulless automation to starting to regain some of his humanity, and he starts like referring to his party as his friends and saying that he enjoys adventures, but he's also burdened by this extreme sense of guilt. So, on the whole, does Goblin Slayer season two stand up to season one? I think it does. Once again, they did something a little bit different. They didn't try to completely replicate season one. They kind of took they had continuity, shall we say. They took the character development and plot development and kind of world development of season one and just kind of expanded upon it further. Now, I haven't read the light novels, but I kind of hope that if season three gets made, we start heading a bit more back into a meta plot. So I think we've done a good job kind of getting everybody caught up. And now it's time maybe to get back to like something with why are there goblins throughout the world or the Demon King or something like that. That would all be really cool. So on the whole, I'm gonna say that I really like Goblin Slayer season two. Highly recommended. If you haven't watched Goblin Slayer season one, definitely go watch it. I know that it sounds goofy because it's called like Goblin Slayer, and none of the characters have names. They're all like High Elf Archer or something like that. What I think would be funny is if you know the scene in what's it called again? In Avatar: The Last Airbender, where the king invites them to a party for his bear. They're like, "You mean like a platypus bear or a mole bear?" They're like, "No, just bear." And Tom's like, "This place is weird." If somebody had like a just a normal name, that might be kind of funny. I think there are a couple people with a normal name. I think Goblin Slayer's teacher has one. A couple people might. It's kind of a matter of debate as to whether Goblin Slayer and the rest of them have canonical names or not. Um, if like it's just because they're playing like a role playing game, so like they just have their character, or if it's just you can make up a name for them, or it's maybe a world where people just don't say each other's names. I don't know, but overall, Goblin Slayer season 2, great. Go watch it. God bless everybody, and more exciting content to come.